Hi, good afternoon, friends. Thank you very much for watching my video. This video talks about the third chapter of economics, which is price functioning of a mixed capitalistic enterprise. Now, what basically we'll do is we'll be talking about key concepts. So this has been taken from the reference textbook courtesy Paul Samuelson, 7th edition. So I'm trying to help students understand basics of this chapter and also of economics in a more friendly manner, purely for learning and education purpose. Please note that this is not an advisor offer and this video should only be considered for educational purposes. Thank you. Okay, now coming straight to the topic which says that functioning of a mixed capitalistic enterprise. Now, this basically tries to mean what is actually a mixed capitalistic enterprise. As the name suggests, that it will have both mixed, that means public and private participation. So, in real life, like even in developed nations like United States, there is nothing like pure private participation. Though largely there is private participation, but you also have a lot of roles which the public enterprises, which means the government agencies, have to take. For example, this could mean setting up of roads, bridges, providing basic amenities of food, water, electricity, which the private players cannot do because of the cost involved in it. That's why most economies are basically purely a mixture of public and private. Obviously, the percentage may vary depending upon the kind of country. And even in dictatorial countries like formal Russia, USSR, which we call, where state had everything, or formerly China. So even now, they have opened some part to private participation. So actually, it boils down to the fact that things have to work together. That's why the thing called mixed economy. Now, what we talk about, we'll share key theoretical concepts like free enterprise. So, what does a free enterprise mean? That imagine a situation where there was a situation where anybody could produce basically things without any kind of hurdle. For example, it could be any order which you want to produce, any kind of quantity that you could produce in the market. So, such is an ideal state, which in economics is called a free enterprise, where the enterprise can produce any quantity, any amount. But in real life, you are guided by various situations beyond your control. So that is why this is a theoretical concept for understanding purpose. Now, why we use this concept is basically to understand the invisible hand. Now, what happens is each one of the individuals in the economy, let's say a small shopkeeper is producing, let's say, for example, chole bhature, my favorite. So now he is interested only in making profit, but indirectly he is also playing the role of doing good to all. For example, there are 10 chole bhatures in our area, for example. So, one chole bhature wala will be able to control the price by to a certain extent by charging 20 rupees a plate or 30 rupees a plate. But if there are 10 people, his price will be competitive. So, in a way, whatever is produced because of this competition, the pricing and everything gets controlled in a proper manner, and nobody is able to charge unfair profit. So, this is basically an invisible hand which is playing in the sector. Now, coming to another ideal concept, imagine if there was a state of perfect competition. That means what happens if there is every player in the market is not that big enough that he can influence the price of that product. Nobody, no enterprise or no company is that big that it can produce so much quantity and hold and control the price. And everybody in the economy is in a reasonable level producing output and not kind of manipulating the price. That is called perfect competition. So if you imagine around yourself, there are thousands of industries, let's say small scale industries. So each one is producing some amount of goods and services, but they cannot control the price. However, if in your economy or your local surroundings there is a one huge company which is producing some good and is a major producer, then he can control. So that becomes imperfect competition. So we need to understand that perfect competition does not happen in real life, but perfect competition, near to perfect competition could happen, because you could still have so many players who could try to produce XX amount of output or YY amount of output and thereby keep a balance in the system. Now, price system, which is a very important thing which you should understand, is very critical. Now, pricing is not determined by you tomorrow that, okay, I will produce, let's say, Fevicol and I have to charge 1,000 rupees for this. No, I cannot determine this price because there are 20 more players in the market who will be competing with me. So they will affect the overall price for the product. Then cheaper variants to Fevicol could be available in the market. So that could also determine the price. So I am not the only person who decides the price. It is the sum total of all the people, and overall, the most important thing in price determination is the demand of that good. If 100 people are demanding Fevicol, then obviously the price of Fevicol would go up in the market. Suddenly, if nobody demands, the price will come down. So these are some aspects in finding out how the price of a good or commodity is determined by the market. Most of example, the votes of the consumer. A lot of people are demanding what has to be produced of a particular product. And also, as I suggested, cheaper variants could be a competition. So all these decide the price of the good which we are talking about, or service. Now, there is an interesting thing in the book, which obviously I cannot show in the form of a diagram, but I'll try to explain how the overall economy of goods and services works. For example, there is public, like people like you and me, who demand, let's say, shoes or a house or tea. So then obviously there will be some people who will be supplying us these goods. So they will be businesses who will be supplying shoes, houses, tea. Now, how will the business supply this? So they will demand people like labor, land, capital to produce these goods. And who will provide these goods? Ultimately, the public. That means people like you and me will be working for them and producing these things. So this completes the entire circle of demand and supply in the economy. Fine. So now we will be talking about things which I talked earlier called imperfect competition, called monopoly. Now, why monopoly? Because sometimes people become really big. Some businesses are huge that they can control maximum share of goods and service, and then they can start holding demand unfair pricing of that product. So that leads to a monopoly or unfair advantage to the price, which the government and other things should try to address and kind of force them to kind of vacate that unfair advantage and take action against some people. Herein comes the role of government. So, what, how, and for whom government also decides, because government also is a big producer of goods and services. For example, bridges, in terms of a lot of public infrastructure facilities. Also, government collects lots of taxes and other things, creates law and order as a situation. So, all these things require people, services, capital at a larger scale, so they do. Finally, we talk now about capital, division of labor, and money. Now, what happens is capital is something which everybody tries to, or is a key component in anything, be it in the form of elaborate machines, factories, plants. So, this is a very critical input in manufacturing of anything. But now, in all developed economies, including all countries, there is a division of labor which is happening, and money is a critical part in every transaction. What do you mean by division of labor? Specialization. For example, in a car manufacturing, some people will be only tightening the screws so they become the experts. Somebody will be only fitting the windshield. So, without all these people, you would not be able to produce the car. So, everybody specializes in that particular bit of his trade or his service that he is offering. This happens because of the overall division and specialization, because as we develop an economy, people start specializing. And why? Because then they become experts in that trade and start doing things better. Finally, we talk about the extensive use of money. So if you remember, in the olden days, people used to have barter as a system of exchange. What is barter? I have, let's say, Fevicol, but the other person has, let's say, a lighter. So what happens? The other person who needs Fevicol, and if I need the lighter, then what will happen? Obviously, if both people need, then the barter will be successful. If both people don't need it, the barter will not take place. So then they developed money, because let's say I have Fevicol and the other person also has lighter, but then there's no trade happening. But if we both have money, then I can buy lighter from him, or either vice versa. He could buy the Fevicol from me by paying me money, and money could buy any type of good that we need. So overall, in the country's development, money plays a very critical role, and money has developed, and new forms of money, currency, and other things have been taking shape in the current scenario. And electronic money has also now come, digital form of money, including in this period, we see all transactions online. So it's evolving. But money itself is primarily for buying goods and services. Otherwise, it has no value of its own. Only the value is that it is able to buy things of value to us. That's what's the role of money. And lastly, this chapter talks about uh, very critical and interesting concept, that if tomorrow India was to become a developed nation, so we are trying hard, then we will have to forego our present consumption of goods and services to developing infrastructure and forming capital for future consumptions. Let's say we have X amount of resources of goods and services, and we are spending them all in whatever our needs. So we are not increasing our capital formation. But if we forego some capital formation and then use that into form better machines, better infrastructure for later, then the output will increase further in years to come, and overall the development of the country will go faster. That's what is being emphasized, and which any country should do. Thank you very much for watching this video, and stay healthy and stay safe. Thank you once again.